My daughter turned 10 last week. She sat by the front door for nearly 9 hours, wearing the sparkly pink dress she picked out herself, her hair done up in the way her father used to like, holding the gift she made for him out of construction paper and glitter glue. She waited and waited. Every time a car passed the house, she stood up straight, hopeful. Her little face would light up for a second, then drop when the car didn't stop. He promised. He told her, "This year, baby girl, I'll be there this time, 3 p.m. sharp." By 8:30, I couldn't take it anymore. The cake was melting. The candles had been lit and blown out twice, once by accident, once by wind. I walked over to her and said, "Come on, Mira. Let's blow out the candles together, just you and me." She looked up at me, and for the first time all day, her voice cracked. "Okay." We walked to the table. I lit the candles again. We held hands. She closed her eyes. Just as we leaned in, the doorbell rang. Mira froze. I felt it too, that impossible flicker of hope. She ran to the door. I followed right behind her, but when she opened it, it wasn't him. It was a stranger, a man I had never seen before, standing on our porch in a navy jacket, holding a wrapped gift and a letter. "Are you Janelle Ruiz?" he asked quietly. "I was asked to bring this today, for your daughter." I took the envelope from his hand. My fingers trembled before I even opened it, and when I read what was inside, I had to sit down. My legs couldn't hold me anymore, because the words in that letter changed everything I thought I knew about Mira's father, about the kind of man he really was, and what he left behind. I had been up since 5 that morning, not because I had to be, but because I couldn't sleep. Birthdays were always complicated in our house, especially Mira's. Her father had missed the last 2, and I didn't want to admit how hard I was hoping this one would be different. I stood in the kitchen, icing the cake I had baked the night before, vanilla with strawberries, her favorite. Mira had drawn the design herself, a rainbow over a sketch pad with the words, "double digits," in big, colorful letters. She was turning 10. She said it like it meant she was stepping into the world, becoming her own person. I could see it in her eyes, the way she stood taller, spoke more confidently, even picked out her own party dress a month ago, pink with little stars on the sleeves. She woke up around 7 and came into the kitchen still rubbing sleep from her eyes, but smiling. That bright, unstoppable smile she always had when her dad made a promise. He said 3 o'clock, right, Mama? I nodded. I didn't lie. That's what he said. She spun in a slow circle, her voice rising as she daydreamed aloud. "Do you think he'll bring it? The sketchbook from the art shop in New York?" She had mentioned it to him once on a phone call 3 months ago. He had said he'd try. "I'm sure he'll bring something special," I said, stirring the batter for cupcakes she'd take to school the next day. I kept my voice light, but my stomach was tight. Mira didn't eat much breakfast. She was too excited. By 9, she was already dressed and had moved her little chair to the front window. She sat there cross-legged, sketching in her old notebook, stopping only to look up every time a car passed. I watched from the hallway, pretending to be busy with decorations. I hung the birthday banner she made from string and cardstock. Each letter was colored by hand. She had even added "Welcome, Dad" in gold marker beneath the main sign. The house felt warmer with her laughter bouncing off the walls, but it also felt fragile, like one wrong word would cause everything to fall apart. That's how it always was with Damon. We had separated 3 years ago, officially at least. The truth is, he left us long before that, one broken promise at a time. At first, it was missed dinners, then holidays, then birthdays. But no matter how many times he let Mira down, she never stopped believing he'd change. She carried hope like it was stitched into her heart. And I let her, because I didn't have the strength to take it away. By noon, she had asked to set up the candles. "Just in case he's early," she said. She lined them up along the cake, counting them twice. I watched her from the doorway, her tiny fingers adjusting the last candle to make it perfectly straight. I made sure my phone was fully charged. I kept checking it for messages. Nothing. I didn't want to admit it, but I was waiting too. I hated myself for it. After everything Damon had put us through, I still held on to this sliver of hope that maybe he'd show up just once when he said he would, that maybe he'd surprise both of us. By 2, she was pacing. By 3, she was glued to the window. She kept saying, "Any minute now," and I kept replying, "I'm sure." Family members started calling. My sister, my mom, my cousin Laura. They wanted to sing happy birthday, see Mira's smile. They asked if Damon was coming. I told them I didn't know. I left the probably not part out. Mira didn't ask for presents that year. She didn't care about games or cake or balloons. She only wanted one thing. She wanted her dad to walk through that door and tell her he remembered, that she mattered. That was the hardest part of all. Watching her wait with that wide, hopeful grin, watching time crawl past while her face slowly changed from excitement to confusion, then to quiet disappointment. Still, she didn't complain. She didn't cry. She just kept sitting there, looking out the window, the sketch pad on her lap, the banner fluttering behind her every time the door opened and closed. And I stood behind her, powerless to fix what she didn't yet understand. By 3:15, I had lost count of how many times Mira stood up and sat back down. The sound of passing cars had turned into background noise, but she kept checking anyway. Her eyes followed each one with that same small flicker of belief. It hurt to watch. I stayed in the kitchen longer than I needed to, pretending to wipe the counters, listening closely for the sound of a car door or footsteps on the porch. Nothing came. I checked my phone again. Still no text, no missed call. Not even a lousy voicemail. I stared at his name in my contacts for a long time, thumb hovering over the call button, before I shut the screen off. If he was coming, he would have been here by now. I peeked into the living room. Mira was still by the window, arms wrapped around her knees. The sketch pad had fallen to the floor beside her, forgotten. She wasn't drawing anymore. I walked over, knelt beside her, and touched her shoulder. "Hey, baby," I said softly. "Why don't we do cake now? We can still call Grandma and everyone," and she shook her head without looking at me. "Not yet." Her voice was steady, but her eyes were glassy. She wiped her nose with the sleeve of her dress and picked up the sketch pad again, though she didn't open it. "He said he'd be here, Mama. He told me on the phone. He promised." I nodded, not trusting my voice. It was nearly 4:30 when she asked if she could move a chair outside. I helped her carry it to the porch. She sat in it like she was guarding something sacred. She refused to take off the party hat I'd placed on her head earlier, even though it was starting to bend and lose shape. She kept the handmade birthday card she drew for her dad on her lap. I brought out a blanket as the wind picked up, tucking it around her shoulders like a shield. At one point, a delivery truck pulled into our neighbor's driveway. Mira stood up so fast the card flew from her lap. Her face lit up with such sudden joy that I caught my breath. She ran to the edge of the porch, craning her neck, hoping it was him, but it wasn't. She stepped back slowly, picked up her card, and sat down again without saying a word. By 5:30, she still hadn't moved. I brought her a slice of cake and set it on the porch railing. She didn't touch it. I sat with her then. I needed to be near her, even if I couldn't say the things I wanted to, that Damon wasn't coming, that he'd never intended to, that I didn't know what kind of man promised his child the world and then vanished like a ghost. "I think maybe he got stuck in traffic," she whispered. I didn't respond. I couldn't lie anymore. She glanced sideways at me. Or maybe his phone died, or maybe... I stopped her gently. "Mira." She looked up at me with wide, searching eyes. "It's not your fault," I said. "You didn't do anything wrong." Her lip trembled, and she nodded quickly like she wanted to believe me but couldn't fully take it in. She leaned her head against my arm, and I kissed her hair. By 6:45, the wind had picked up again. The candles we'd placed on the cake kept blowing out. I relit them twice. Mira had finally agreed to come inside, though her eyes stayed fixed on the front door. The guests we invited, mostly family and a couple of neighborhood kids, had long since gone home. Everyone said they understood, but I could hear the quiet pity in their voices. They meant well, but I hated it. I set the cake down on the table. The frosting was starting to melt around the edges. Mira stood behind her chair, holding onto it like it anchored her to the floor. I smiled, even though my chest was aching. "Ready to make a wish?" She stared at the 10 flickering candles. Her voice was barely a whisper. "Can I wait 5 more minutes?" I glanced at the clock. It was already 8:40. I didn't want to say yes. I didn't want to give her any more rope to hang her hopes on, but I nodded anyway. 5 more minutes, I said, because even after everything, I was still hoping too. It was 8:45 when I finally made the decision. Mira was still holding on to the last thread of hope, and I could see that thread fraying. She stood quietly beside the table, eyes locked on the 10 tiny flames flickering against the darkening windows. Her shoulders had sunk. Her lips were pressed tightly together, like she was holding in something that might shatter if she let it slip out. I reached for the lighter one more time and relit the 2 candles that had fizzled out. Then I looked at her. "Sweetheart," I said softly, "we waited all day. I think it's time we blow out your candles together." She didn't respond at first. Then she nodded once, slowly. Not because she agreed, but because she didn't have the energy left to argue. I could feel the weight in the room. All day we had balanced between hope and disappointment, and now it tipped. Mira walked over and sat down at the table without saying a word. She rested her hands in her lap and stared at the candles. I stood beside her and placed my hand on her back. "You can still make a wish," I said. "Wishes don't have to be about anyone else. They can be just for you." She looked up at me. "I don't want to wish for anything." I didn't push her. I just nodded and took a breath. "All right then. We'll just blow them out together." We counted to 3. She leaned forward. I followed. Right as we were about to blow, the doorbell rang. It wasn't loud, but it cut through the silence like a shout. Mira froze mid-breath. Her head snapped toward the door. She knocked her chair back, trying to stand up. The candles were forgotten. Her eyes were huge, full of something that had flickered all day but now sparked into full flame. "Mom, that's him. It has to be." She ran before I could say a word. I followed close behind her, heart pounding. I didn't want to move too quickly, but I couldn't stay still. Every part of me hoped and feared at the same time. What if it was him? What if it wasn't? Mira reached the door and flung it open, but it wasn't Damon. It was a man I didn't recognize. Mid-40s, neatly dressed, light brown hair with a streak of gray at the temple. He wore a navy jacket and held a medium-sized gift bag in one hand and a sealed white envelope in the other. His expression was calm, but his eyes softened when they landed on Mira. "Hi," he said gently. "Are you Janelle Ruiz?" I stepped forward and put a hand on Mira's shoulder. "Yes, that's me." "I was asked to deliver this today," he said, holding out the gift bag and envelope. "It's for your daughter." From Damon Ruiz. The name hit me like a slap. My breath caught, and I didn't reach for the envelope right away. "Who are you?" I asked. "My name is Kyle Bennett. I was a friend of Damon's. He asked me to bring this to your home today. He was very clear about the date and the time." Mira looked up at me, confused, her expression shifting between hope and uncertainty. "Is he coming?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Kyle hesitated before shaking his head. "No, honey, he's not coming today." He handed me the envelope, and I finally took it. My fingers trembled. It was Damon's handwriting. I would have recognized it anywhere. "Thank you," I said, barely managing the words. Kyle nodded and gave Mira a small smile. "Happy birthday, Mira," he said quietly. "Your dad loved you very much." Then he turned and walked away, leaving us standing in the open doorway. I stared at the envelope. Mira clutched the gift bag to her chest like it held the answer to every question she hadn't dared to ask all day. We stepped back inside. I walked her to the couch, and we sat down together. I held the envelope in both hands, took a breath, and opened it. I unfolded the letter slowly, careful not to tear it. The paper was thick, smooth, the kind people use when they want something to last. Mira leaned in close, her small shoulder pressed against mine. She still hadn't opened the gift bag. Her eyes were fixed on the letter in my hands. At the top, in Damon's handwriting, were the words, "To my daughter, Mira, on your 10th birthday." I started reading aloud, my voice shaking. "Mira, I know today is your birthday, and if things were different, I'd be right there with you. I'd be handing you this gift myself. I'd be hugging you so tight your hair would stick to my sweater. But life didn't give me more time." I paused and looked down at her. Her hands were tight around the handles of the gift bag, her knuckles white. Her lips were parted, and she was staring straight ahead like she was trying not to blink. I kept reading. "I've been sick, Mira, for a while now. I didn't want you to see me like that, so I said nothing. I thought I had more time. But the truth is, when I made you that promise, I believed I could keep it. I believed I'd get better. I was wrong." My chest tightened. I had guessed something was wrong over the last year, but I didn't expect this. I didn't expect finality. Your mom is stronger than I ever was. She has carried you through things you should never have had to go through. Listen to her. Trust her. She will never lie to you. My voice cracked, but I kept going. Mira's eyes were filling with tears, but she didn't look away. This isn't a goodbye, Mira. I am with you in every drawing you make, every laugh that sounds like your mom's, every time you feel like no one sees how special you are. I see you. I have always seen you. I just didn't always know how to show it. I stopped reading. I couldn't go any further without my voice breaking completely. I handed her the letter, and she held it like it was a piece of treasure. For a long time, she didn't say anything. She didn't cry, didn't scream, didn't ask why he didn't tell her sooner. She just sat there, her eyes full and still. Finally, she whispered, "He's gone?" I nodded. "Yes, baby, he's gone." She opened the gift bag slowly. Inside was a hardbound sketchbook, the exact one she had asked for. Her name was embossed on the front in silver, Mira Ruiz. Tucked inside the front cover were 3 pages of drawings, each one done in Damon's familiar style. They weren't polished or perfect, but they were full of life. One showed the two of them holding hands with her birthday crown on her head. Another showed her sitting on a swing, looking up at the sky. The last was a self-portrait of Damon, smiling, holding a sign that read, "I'm proud of you." Mira touched the paper like she was afraid it might disappear. Her lower lip trembled, but she didn't look away. She ran her fingers over the lines of his sketch, then closed the book gently and held it against her chest. "I thought he forgot me," she said. I wrapped my arms around her. "He didn't forget. He just didn't know how to be what you needed. But I think in the end he tried." We sat there together on the couch. No music, no cake, just a quiet kind of grief that didn't need to be spoken. The kind that comes when the truth breaks your heart, but also sets something inside you free. Outside, the wind picked up. The candles on the cake had long since gone cold, but it didn't matter anymore. Mira whispered, "I want to draw now." She opened the sketchbook and turned to a blank page. I watched her pencil move across the paper, slow and steady like she was writing back. Mira filled that sketchbook faster than I ever imagined. Every evening after school, she would sit at the kitchen table, her head bent low, drawing with a focus that made the rest of the world feel far away. Sometimes she sketched memories. Sometimes she drew what she missed. And sometimes she just filled the pages with color, layer after layer, until the paper was heavy with it. She never asked why Damon hadn't told her sooner. She never blamed him out loud. But I could see the questions in her eyes during those first few weeks, especially when we passed by the park where they used to go or heard his name in a passing conversation. There were days when the sadness sat heavily on her chest, and I didn't try to pull it off. I just sat with her in the quiet, holding space until she felt strong enough to speak. One night, about a month after her birthday, I found her in her room holding the letter again. She had read it so many times that the folds were starting to soften and fray at the edges. She looked up and asked, "Do you think he really meant it? That he was proud of me?" I knelt beside her and met her eyes. "Yes," I said. "I think he meant every word." She nodded and didn't ask anything else. Grief, I've learned, doesn't always come in loud sobs or dramatic scenes. Sometimes it's in the small pauses, in the way she lingered before turning off the lights, in the drawings where his figure stood farther away than the rest, in the empty seat she left next to her during her school play. But slowly, gently, that grief softened. It didn't vanish, but it stopped cutting so sharply. She began talking about him again, not like a wound, but like a person she had known and loved and lost. A few weeks later, she brought her sketchbook to school for show and tell. She read the letter out loud to her class and told them, without tears, that her dad had been sick and that he loved her enough to send a message even when he couldn't be there. Her teacher called me after and said there wasn't a dry eye in the room. But what struck her most wasn't the sadness. It was Mira's strength, her clarity, the quiet confidence of a child who had found peace in truth. As for me, I wrestled with my own emotions. For years, I carried anger toward Damon like a weight. I blamed him for every missed recital, every bedtime story I had to read alone, every moment Mira asked me when he'd call next. I thought I had hardened to it, but reading that letter cracked something open in me too. He had made mistakes, big ones. He had failed her in ways I will never fully understand. But in the end, he did something right. He gave her what every child deserves, the truth, a message of love, and a final memory that wasn't abandonment. It was effort. It was presence, even if only through ink on paper. Sometimes I wonder what Damon would think if he saw Mira now. Not just her drawings, which have become more detailed and expressive with every page, but the way she walks into a room, the way she speaks up for herself, the way she lets herself be vulnerable without shame. I think he would be proud, and I think he would regret not being there to see it happen. On the day she finished the last page of the sketchbook, she handed it to me without a word. I flipped through the drawings, stopping on one near the end. It was of the two of us. We were sitting on the couch, our arms around each other, the letter in her lap. Above it, she had written, "I didn't get the birthday I wished for, but I got the one I needed." That night, we lit the 10 candles again, not because we were waiting on anyone this time, just because we wanted to. We blew them out together, not as two people hoping for someone to show up, but as a mother and daughter who had already learned how to keep going without him and how to let love stay anyway. Thank you for listening to our story. If it moved you, even a little, please take a second to like the video. It helps more people find stories like this. If you've ever waited on someone who didn't show up or found unexpected healing in the most surprising way, share your experience in the comments. I read every single one, and your words might help someone else feel a little less alone. Share this video with someone who might need it today. And if you want more true stories that speak from the heart and remind us of the strength we carry, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss what's next. From my family to yours, thank you for being here.